Yo, you ready?
Time for some fun.
Whoa. What are you doing? We can't say this on the family-friendly podcast. We can't use that language. So, let's go! Follow me into the land of happiness podcasting, where everything is happy and fun. You know what? This isn't going to work for me. DJ, let's go back. You're going to sound real stupid.
You have entered the Yamnation.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, God, what was I thinking? Cello, everybody. Welcome back. I want to say thank you so much to Last Day Living. That's right, Last Day Living. You can find them on Reverb Nation, Facebook, YouTube. They are everywhere. They're touring right now. So what would you do if I said a pastor, a Muslim, and an atheist walk into a bar? Of course, that's a setup for a joke, right? But fortunately, it wasn't. Only difference is they didn't walk into a bar. They walked into my podcasting room. Yeah, that's right. Now, I posted in a few forums that I was going to have this conversation. And man, I got a great response. Everybody wanted me to ask them different questions. This is where it really got fun. I had a great time. And we've got our quick question segment with the musical composer for the hit TV show This Is Us, Siddhartha Khosla. So check it out. Tell me what you think. Leave a like, leave a comment, and you know what? Hit that share button one time. Fwee, fwee, fwee. That was the air horn, y'all. Here it is. Quick questions with Siddhartha Khosla. Quick question. As a composer, how different is it creating from that to creating, I would say, in Gold Spot?
Well, Gold Spot is my band, and so I started my career as a singer-songwriter, and that's very different because in Gold Spot, I write about my own family's experiences, my experiences in relationships and love and loss, but in This Is Us, this is collaborative. I'm looking at the story of our writer, so it's a very collaborative process. I feel like I'm working on a beautiful team, a beautiful family on This Is Us.
Quick question. All right, so we're going to go around the room introducing ourselves. To my left, state your name for me, please.
My name's Casey Crimmins.
Welcome back, Casey.
Hey-ho.
And what faith are you representing?
Oh, boy. I happen to have Christian beliefs. I'm a pastor of a new church plant in Charlotte called Multiply Church.
Multiply Church?
Multiply Church.
All right. And in front of me, back for the second time, we have...
My name is Ibn Tamir Abdul Mutakabir.
And you're going to be representing the Jewish people, right?
Oh, I am a Muslim, and I have the Islamic faith.
All right, welcome back. We appreciate you coming, Ibn. All right, and joining us on the phone, we have...
Dustin Bartow. I am Muslim, and
right.
I'm also an interfaith leader.
Muslim and interfaith leader. Now, I got to ask you a quick question here. Now, I'm just going
Yes.
based off of sound, but are you a white guy?
How dare you assume my ethnicity? Yes, I'm white.
Well, that is interesting to hear. You don't usually hear about a white Muslim. So, welcome. We appreciate you coming, man. Well, calling in, at least.
Thanks for having me.
And to my right, we have...
My name is John Casson. I am a white man. Apparently that was important to you. I represent the Agnostic and Atheist community.
All right. Welcome, John. Thank you so much. Here we go. All these different religions in one room and the absence of religion in one room as well. So, what, if anything, can we all agree on? What is a common ground?
I think we could all agree on that you need to have a fundamental compass of some kind. And that compass very often is your guide, whether or not you believe in a formal higher power, or literal higher power, or some other being, or some reincarnation of a being, or you just have a foundation of what is morally right and wrong. I think the foundation isn't of all just religions, but even of people like us, hopefully in this room, where you have a sense of right and wrong, and you're going to do that and follow that compass. Without a compass, I think whether you have religion or not, you stray.
Okay. Anybody else? Common ground? What do we share?
I'd agree with that. This is Casey. I'd agree with that. The moral compass, I think there's some innate things just about the human experience that we understand if we do certain things well, that it will create human flourishing, and if we do some things incorrectly, it's going to create human death.
Okay. Dustin, what do you think?
I think that in addition to having the moral compass, we all share the human experience.
Mhm.
And all of us in our own way struggle to rationalize the human experience that we are living and existing in every day versus the kind of existence that we innately feel that all of humanity should share. And I think that's part of the struggle and why religion or a faith system is so important.
Ibn, you concur? Or is this a
Yes,
separate Muslim idea here?
No,
That's what white Muslims believe.
no, that's I agree. It's so eloquent of Dustin. I believe there is a basis of how human beings should treat each other,
Mhm.
and it's the golden rule that a lot of people can agree to. Treat
Absolutely.
people how you want to be treated, and the fact that we're all human beings, we can connect on the human experience. Everybody has feelings, emotions, and experiences that are common that we all can relate to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd also, since we all kind of live in this area, Dustin, where do you live, bud?
I live in Lincoln County.
Okay.
Yes.
So for us in Charlotte, I think also there's some cultural normatives that taking the human experience, overlaying it onto what culturally is taking place, I think there is some common ground as well. While we might filter it differently, we're trying to filter through some of the same things, push against or welcome some of those cultural normatives in the Southeast just as a shared geographic piece of it as well. Again, sifting through it with different lenses, but having to sift through it specifically. I think that's...
Okay. Now, with all these different religions in the world, you got over 3,000 belief systems. Why is yours the correct one? Ibn?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, I'll put it broadly to start. In Islam, the basis of the faith starts with a sincere heart. Okay? So even Muslims can receive damnation, so to speak, if they don't have a sincere heart, or hypocrites, or just plain old don't do what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in Islam, we believe that a sincere heart that makes mistakes like every human being does, but is sincere in seeking that truth, they will have their reward with their Lord. So
Okay.
that's also Quranically based, as what Islam teaches. So what makes my religion the one that's right
Mm-hmm.
is because labels is one thing that human beings, we give each other. But when you get into Islamic teachings and the language of the way the Quran reads, the concept in its core is that there is no religion. When you translate these words, in the Quran, it says that the name of your religion is Islam, but the meaning of Islam is to submit to the will of God. So, when God's speaking and says that, because it's all Arabic, right?
Mm-hmm.
The name of your religion is following the will of God.
So
Not a
does that-
label of a title that is given to now.
Okay, so that takes away a quote-unquote religious title.
Right.
Okay.
And a lot of times, a lot of the patriarchs of religion, did they really have a title? Like a lot of we have common faith with if a lot of people didn't know that, I don't know.
What's that?
Some people didn't know that Jesus is in the Quran.
Yeah.
Abraham.
They give
alayhi
lineage
salam,
in the Quran as well.
Ibrahim. But the thing is, these prophets, they have labeled religions now, but did they say what the name of their religion is? So, like Abraham, did he say the name of this religion is going to be, boom?
I'm going to be in charge of Southern Baptist from here on out.
No, so people gave those titles. Okay, so in comparison with Islam, it's not named after its prophet. It's not named after any landmass or region or a person or a group of people. That word is an Arabic word from the Quran that means to submit to the will of God. So,
okay, all right, John, what's your stance on that? Being an atheist / agnostic, how would you answer that question?
I don't know. I know how I would answer the question. I don't know what religion is the right religion and what's the wrong religion. There's something I do know, and I think we can all agree. We are all flawed. Men are flawed. Human beings are flawed. You can't remember what you did yesterday, probably many things, and I couldn't either. And I find it challenging, maybe not impossible, but challenging to believe that things that happened thousands of years ago were recorded properly, were recorded accurately, and were passed down without the human hand of deception, which we were all guilty of, inserting or removing content to set the agenda, either deliberately or inadvertently, to whatever was happening at the time. And for that reason, it's difficult for me, in the brain that God gave me, if there is in fact is a God, to believe that any of the teachings, particularly from that many years ago, could be accurate with a reasonable degree of certainty.
Okay. All right. Good way to put it. I like that. Casey, from a Christian standpoint, what makes the Holy Bible or Christianity the correct one?
Yeah. So to follow with the broader terms first, I think the basis, and John just pointed to it, the basis of Christianity begins back in Genesis 3, where there's a fall, and that there was some manner of or some action taken or something took place that caused brokenness to enter our world. And I think a lot of folks can look around and go, there's something wrong. There's something inadvertently wrong. I have a 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old that lies to me sometimes, and I'm like, dude, I'd teach this kid to do it. Like, come on now. So Christianity looks at that and goes, okay, if this is broken, how do we get restored? What's the restorative process? And we look at Christ, and we look at his life, and we look at his death and resurrection and the things that he taught and spoke and that. And yes, there is a lot of faith to say that what's been handed to us is true from 2,000 years ago. But with that as the basis, we go, if he was who he said he is and did the things that he said he did, or he said he was going to do, then that's the thing that connects us back to the fullness or the pre-brokenness that God had intended from the beginning. So we say that Christ is the one that provides that and provides the answer to that, versus our human attempts to try to climb back up that mountain of unbrokenness or of wholeness.
Okay. Dustin, this next question's for you. Can you explain to me what is jizya in the Muslim faith?
Gosh, you have to put that in a temporal context too. Jizya is also it's something that is only in effect when the Muslims are the ones in dominance in a land. Okay, so if we go back in time and look how jizya was applied in, let's say, Andalusian Spain, we won't even go all the way back to the time of the Prophet. Mm-hmm. But if we look at Andalusian Spain, the reason why the Muslims came into the area is because the Jews and non-Catholic Christians and pagans of the area were being brutalized by the Catholic Church of the day. And the Muslims came in to end the oppression and to establish a society where everybody had rights and where everybody had the ability to worship as they pleased. So the jizya was a tax that non-Muslims paid to support and uphold the upkeep of the army to maintain the peace. And a non-Muslim could opt out of the jizya if they served in the military, and if they served in the military, they had to abide by Islamic law, or if they were incapable of paying because of poverty, then they were not required to pay the jizya. So basically, it was just a tax for the upkeep of the army. That's it.
So it was a tax that only Muslims were exempt from?
Well,
Yeah, Muslims didn't pay it because Muslims already are required to pay zakat. So
what is that?
The jizya was something that was for the non-Muslims, and Muslims had to pay zakat. Zakat is an obligatory charity. Every Muslim has to pay it.
Like
to
tithing for
support the
Christianity.
poor. Yeah. Oh, yes. It's similar, yeah. There's much more rules on it and all that. But really, the reason why Muslims didn't pay the jizya is because Muslims already had a similar sort of thing that was paid in that also helped for the upkeep of the defense of the community.
Okay. Ibn, can you explain what misfar is?
misfar?
Yes.
I cannot.
Somebody...
So my Islamic terms and vocabulary, I'm not as versed in all, you know. So if it's a translation for it, misfar.
basically, it's a temporary marriage for a man that's traveling.
Oh, okay. A temporary. Okay, I was just reading about that a couple weeks ago. Okay, so in marriage.
Hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Last time I did a podcast with Casey Crimmins, every time I ask a question, a lot of religious leaders like, I was just reading about that the other day. That's a big book.
Well,
how can y'all just be reading about the questions I'm about to ask
Well,
every time?
No, it comes because you know, I read a lot.
Yeah.
It's not that I read. It's not like I sit down and I'll read a whole book at one time. But over the years, you know, you pick up a book, sit 10 minutes and read something.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you get a downtime and you read something else. Okay? So this is something, if you're talking about there's a famous hadith that's used. And the funny thing is, it's used by Islamic leaders to be an explanation for a good thing, as a mercy, but it's also used by people that don't like Islam so much to try to demean Islam. So what it is Islam is about mercy to human beings.
Okay.
And about, you know, God knows us better than we know ourselves. That's the premise. So what that is, or temporary marriage, so to speak, it's not something that's to be done in a way to achieve like mischief. Like we gonna swap out chicks. Like I'm gonna have her for a couple
like
months.
I'm traveling to Philly. Let me hook up. Let me get married real quick.
Like that. No. The only thing I can think of, and this is what I was reading about. The only thing I can think of for this situation, I can look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Okay, the men away from their home, unable to establish a life in their hometown because they're off as soldiers. If anybody knows, in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, he wasn't just a prophet, a messenger of God, but he was a statesman, so to speak, like you would say, like the governor of a state,
Okay.
or statehood, right? So this permission is handed down to soldiers that are away from their homes for long, extenuated periods of time. So they asked if, like, what are we doing here? We're out here. There's no women for the natural urge of men and human beings. I'm not saying men have more. So they were permitted to marry without the until death do us part of that marriage.
Now, why couldn't we
Not
just
to say-
keep that for all religions?
Well, not to say that marriage in it, we married with the intention of being together forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that permission is given as a mercy. You know, so a man doesn't have to, say, for example, do what happens in warfare that really is bad. You know, like you hear about soldiers off in war raping women
Mm-hmm.
and doing a whole lot of things they're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
This is a mercy to that situation. Not to say that they would go rape, but I'm
So to
like,
alleviate,
if I don't do this, I'm a, they asked if they should be castrated. They were like, look, yes, that's part of the history, and they were given that mercy that they can go out and seek a wife, and not have to promise till death do us part, because we're in this situation, So some Muslims that practice that now in 2018, a situation. I mean, it's hard to imagine that being done in any society where that's not at dire straits.
Okay.
Like in 2018, I'm not going to go to some chick and be like, maybe, just so we can get to know each other better, how about we just get married for, maybe 3 years and see how it works out? No, it's more so like I'm missioned to be here for I don't know how long. We're at war. I don't know how long. I might die tomorrow, but while I'm here, let's not wait. Let's get married, and I'll serve as your husband.
I ain't got to rape nobody. Let's go ahead and take care of this now. No,
I'll serve and provide all the husbandly duties. The title of that woman is wife.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best explanation I can give for that.
Now, John,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
add something to that, because there is a principle in the Shia faith the Shia part of Islam that allows that to be done today for the benefit of women who are traveling, especially for Hajj, because women when they travel for Hajj, they're required to have a male representative. Okay. So what the Shia have allowed women to do who are not married is to marry temporarily for the purposes of having a male escort to help them complete the Hajj and return home safely. And so that's one way that concept has benefited women even up until the modern age.
Now, do the guys still get the benefits out of that too, or is it just I'm walking and protecting her?
Depending on the marriage contract. Some of these marriages, I've met people that have done these marriages, and some of them are celibate marriages. That's actually part of the contract, that there is an obligation for protection. The woman actually pays the man as basically a personal guard.
Good job. But
they're married so that they have that kind of legal bonding, and the governments can recognize that they have to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't be subject to the sort of societal problems that would cause unmarried men and women traveling together to be torn apart. Because, we know some of the countries that have been established in the last 150 years have been taken over by people that have a very extreme non-Quranic interpretation of Islam. And so this has allowed women that otherwise wouldn't be able to complete the obligation of faith.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
So I just have to ask, why wouldn't they, rather than do something as drastic as that, why wouldn't they just allow women to do that without the escort of a man?
Good question.
Well, because Saudi Arabia is really governed by the kind of extreme Wahhabi Salafi sect. Mm-hmm. And Shia are mostly in Iran and Syria and some other places. Mm-hmm. So these women would have no control over the way that Saudi Arabia governs things. Okay? So this isn't to overcome some problem with the religion. This is to use the religion in a way that liberates them from oppression of a state.
So you would say it was a loophole around the religion to match the circumstances to achieve a goal.
I wouldn't call it a loophole. I mean, it's intentionally put in place for defense of both men and women. It's not a loophole.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I want to just put out there that, there's things in Islam that would be deemed sinful that are freely practiced today. Like I could be a man married in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a Muslim married man, I'm not going to do certain things with women that, I'm not going to say of any other religion, but like the American dude
Christian
could do. No. I'm
As I point to Casey.
Can I say the American dude without offending anybody? Because we know how the culture is around here, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So things that would not be considered cheating,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for
Like
a Muslim,
different zip code.
for a Muslim man is not good. Like, for example, I'm not going to ride in my car.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ride in my car with a woman that's not my wife.
That's just smart man.
Smart man, right?
Nothing to do with religion there. That's just a
Right.
smart dude.
But in Islam, it's like this: if a man and woman are together, the third person is the devil. Okay? So to avoid suspicion, not just temptation, but to avoid suspicion and temptation, it's a lot of rules that Muslims refrain from. So like if I have to take a woman coworker somewhere to catch a flight, she can ride in the back seat. I'll be like her Uber driver.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna spend time alone
So there's
with a
a
woman
lot.
that's not my wife. So that's why those rules are in place, because in Islam, marriage is not seen as it is over in the West, like where you fall in love and till death do us part and romanticism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because a marriage can be in Islam for a man that comes and brings the groceries over for a lady that's elderly, but because he doesn't want to be around her while she's while he's helping her,
Mm-hmm.
A marriage contract is allowed, because to avoid the suspicion or
To be above reproach.
right.
Okay.
So it's marriage is not seen the same.
Yeah.
What do we do here? We want to fall in love.
You got to
And-
date for 3 to 5 years, then get engaged. And
You,
then-
got to do all that, and dating is a no go.
See, yeah.
So
Yeah, we date after we get married.
well, the ability
You know?
to have multiple wives helps that.
oh goodness,
John, I got this one for you. Do religion and politics go together?
Sure, but not for the reasons you might think. Religion and religious practices are sometimes intermingled. So I can tell you that I have Christian values, most Christian values, which is very accurate, probably Muslim values, some Muslim values as well, but that doesn't make me a Christian or a Muslim. When you introduce it, and I'll add beyond politics, business, or anything else, anything that's any kind of a professional context, or I have an agenda. If I'm a politician, my agenda is to get elected. If I'm a businessman, my objective is to get business. If I'm interjecting my personal religious beliefs as a not my leanings toward, in other words, Christian teachings, but actually saying I'm a Christian, you should vote for me. I'm a Christian, you should do business with me. And you see this in Charlotte probably more than just about anywhere else in the country.
Mm-hmm.
They have Charlotte Christian groups to get together, and I've been to some of those groups, not as a Christian, but you observe those things, and of course I keep my mouth shut either way. But at the end of the day, I think it's very easy to use your religion as a shield against wrongdoing that you commit, or as a sword to and a motivator to get what you want, and frankly manipulate others who are truly spiritual, truly religious, and truly believe in those teachings, and have a perception that may or may not be accurate, that because you are a Muslim, because you are a Christian, because you are a Jew, you are going to look out for their best interest, and you're not going to do them wrong. And I'll even add to that, as somebody who doesn't practice any religion, I won't go out of my way to tell anybody on purpose, unless they ask me, that I'm agnostic or atheist, because it's the opposite reason. Americans would rather elect a killer than elect an atheist. They're literally the last people on the list. They'll elect a child molester, almost did in Alabama, before they elect an atheist. And so when you start having beliefs that radical, instead of looking at what the politician stands for, instead of looking at what the businessman is selling and the quality of his products or goods or services, you start looking at what he professes to be his religion or his beliefs and making a decision based on that. I think that's a step too far. Now, I don't think you shouldn't have the right to do it. I just don't think it's a good mix.
Okay. Casey, religion and politics?
Yeah, I think that was really well said. I think our country has a steeped history in this that's like hard to unravel. We've seen over the last 200 plus years, one election, the Democrats are the Christian folks and we love them, and then 2 elections later it's the Republicans because they're the Christian folks and we love them, and then a professing Christian that maybe isn't practicing anything close to what we would consider to be biblical beliefs, and I think that this is my suspicion, and we're not the youngest people in the world sitting around this room. We don't have to tell our ages, but
22.
There you go. Yeah. Well, the 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds and the millennial as well as Gen Z after us, I think they're the ones raising their hands going, we can't do this anymore. This interwovenness doesn't exist, because I know people that are, deeply devoted followers of Christ, love Jesus, follow what he's teaching, and
vote for Trump.
Well, and go, I can't even vote. Like what is this? And that it makes me not Christian to vote for Trump or vote for Hillary. The interwoven. It's almost like a thread put into this net that we're like, how do we pull this thing out? And I think there's a generation coming that's saying, we can't do this anymore. That if I'm Christian, I'm Republican. If I'm Christian, or if I'm liberal, I'm a Democrat. Like, I think there's an unwinding happening right now that hopefully starts to percolate in the next 2 or 3 elections that we go, we can't do this anymore. So I think it's there and been there for a long time.
What about you, Dustin? Religion and politics. Do they belong together?
It depends on how you're merging them together. Like, I think that a person's religion is always going to inform him or her of their political views. But there should never be an instance where politics goes the other way. That's what the separation of church and state was supposed to be about, is that the government and political leaders should never inform the people about their religion. And there should never be an instance where, like in some countries, in Tunisia, for example, where it's so severe that the imams there had to actually submit their planned lectures on Fridays for government approval, and there were only certain topics they were allowed to teach on. And we have to be very careful that we don't cross over that line. And in other countries, we see that has happened because of colonialism. And the fact that it hasn't happened here is because our founders were very entrenched in the ideals of absolute liberty. And, we're not willing to sacrifice any on any level. We're not willing to sacrifice the concepts of liberty. But in other countries where you had colonialism and the religion was then turned into an instrument of control by the colonialists, you see a lot of this. And what we have seen in America with the evangelical movement is that we have had a form of colonialism that has come in through the use of religion to dictate and control what people think politically. we're on a breaking point. We're on a tipping point where, as a people, we have to collectively decide that we've gone a bridge too far. We need to back up. We need to get back to the foundational elements of the country. I like what Thomas Jefferson said. One of my favorite quotes from him is where he said, "It does me no injury for my neighbor to say that there is no God or that there are 20,000 gods. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg."
Okay. I like that.
TJ.
Well, the reason I asked this question in general is this wasn't one that I had originally planned to ask, but today Trump unveiled what was called the White House Faith Office, okay? And that's basically to ensure that faith-based organizations have equal access to government funding. I have a problem with that. When you're not paying taxes, you shouldn't be able to take from the pot. Thoughts? John?
Well, I'm going to add to that.
He went to John first. John?
Let me start by saying when you're not taking taxes but benefiting from the services, you are taking from the pot, even if you're not going out of your way to take more from the pot. There's a church on the corner of the street here, on the corner of every street, and on that corner has that land has a lot of value. That property has a lot of value. If that church wasn't there and there was a commercial structure there, that would have a lot of value. That value would be taxed, and it would be taxed because it would pay for the fire department if there's a fire, the police department if there's an incident. It would pay for the education people who go to that church or go to that business. It pay for a number of things that still have to be paid for no matter what. The issue I have, and I think a lot of people have, even people who are of faith who have, is you are any nonprofit organization that gets exemptions in things like taxes is by definition taking resources from other people, whether or not those people believe in that particular organization. And you look at today you look at a Republican government and all the things they're against, and you look at a liberal Democratic government and all their things they're for. If Jesus was around, would he be for feeding the poor? Would he be for healing the sick? Would he be for housing the homeless? Those were all very, very strong liberal values. Those were also all values that people on the Republican side of the aisle in this country are very much against. All of those. You earn it on your own. You get your own health care. You figure things out.
By your bootstraps.
You pull it by your bootstraps. So I guess my confusion, and I'm actually not confused. I understand the motivations behind this. I think I do. Is how can you be a Christian or someone of faith that believes in the teachings that say you should do those things, but go against the very organizations that support those things, and at the same time say you should be able to pull yourself up, you shouldn't get any help, you shouldn't take from somebody else, you should be able to do this, and at the same time be in a non-profit organization where you are literally taking resources from something else. And what happened today is another version of that. It takes it to yet another level where you're actually, so we can come in and take additional resources from that. Look, churches and synagogues and of all faiths do a lot of things that help a lot of people, and they should be encouraged to do that, and they should be certainly shouldn't be penalized for doing that. But you can't allow there is no real definition for what constitutes a religious organization. If you believe the definition, and if you look at the IRS, the definition is if you believe in something and you have a steady, consistent practice, whatever that practice is. If my practice is, if I decided I wanted to start a church of the steak and lobster, and I get to eat steak or lobster every day, and that's my practice, and a nice bottle of red wine.
Yeah,
and ultimately, if you and by the way, if you're in my religion and something happens to you and you go to jail, they're going to feed you that in prison because that's part of your faith. That's an extreme, and I would say, and by the way, it costs $5,000 a year to join my cult or my religion. So at the end of the day, if you want to join it and you think you're doing some stuff and you got a statistical probability of getting caught or possibility of getting caught, man, join that religion and be part of that so you can take advantage of those systems. That's not fair. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to taxpayers. It's not fair to anybody. You are imposing, and I love Thomas Jefferson's quote, Dustin, thank you for sharing that. You are imposing your will on other people when you take an exemption of taxes, meaning that other people have to pay more. And that's the part that I'm against.
But isn't taxation just the imposition of will against people anyway? I mean, I'm the libertarian in the room, so I'm anti-tax. I think
Sure.
everybody should be tax exempt.
Sure. So here's the thing. To a point, there's a pendulum that swings both ways. But someone has to pay for the roads. Someone has to pay for education. Someone has to pay for the police and the military and those things like that. History and statistics have proven that when you privatize public resources, the general people who benefit most are the private corporations and not the public as a whole. So there's some things you can absolutely privatize. I would actually agree with you. Probably we can probably go down a whole list of things. But there are some things like prisons. Right now, there are so many African Americans and minorities in prison right now, and there are so many private prisons that they're for-profit private prisons, Dustin, that have an incentive to take a human being and keep them behind a cage. They have an incentive to write on a report maybe that they were misbehaving so they can stay a little bit longer. They have an incentive to send lobbyists to the government to keep things illegal like marijuana or keep people down and arrested and behind bars, because the more people that are behind bars, the more money they make. Those things should not be privatized. Roads where you have an incentive to clog roads and make things congested so you can make private roads where people who have money and means can go ahead and do things, those things should not be privatized. Education where you are teaching your children, my children, to grow up and be free-thinking, open-minded people. A private corporation, it's been proven time and time again that they will teach with an agenda or teach with a profit motive in mind, and that's extremely frustrating. And for those reasons, you have to figure out a way to make those people able to pay for those resources, but certainly not carve out an exemption for any specific entity, frankly, and that whether you're overseas or a religious organization or anything else. That's my opinion.
Does anybody in the room or Dustin on the phone, do you know why and when the tax exemption for nonprofit organizations or religious organizations started?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say about the 30s, 40s.
Do we know why?
Recession, depression, all the greats.
No, man, the oppression of, I don't know.
Well, that's 'cause
Is it to establish a venue for people of need to have somewhere to go to so that they can help the people in the community?
I actually don't know the answer to this question, which is why it's tough to answer this, because I'm 10 years in corporate America and I was an accounting major, so I'm not to represent the entirety of Christendom or at least Protestant side. It's tough for me. I think the Christian church should be the best run business on the planet, because we're modeling behavior and practices that are should be the most exemplary. And if there was a shift that they said, hey, actually, we're going to start to make you pay taxes, that shouldn't be as detrimental as it probably would be to a lot of organizations, because you then have people running businesses and running churches that aren't very good business people. And in the natural progression of any business cycle, the people that aren't doing it well don't make it.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I'm for the church. I'm for the established church. I think we should be the best run business, and even the fact that you John, are questioning the value of it, that breaks my heart, because we should not just be the best run, but we should be wanted in our communities. We should be the ones in and clothing the homeless and feeding and that, to the point that the community goes, we're glad that you're here, and it's exciting that you're here, versus, man, you're stealing all of our money. If we're doing our job right.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I absolutely agree with you, and I have some good news for you, the accounting major, and me, the controller. If you are doing your job right, and I believe that, and by the way, I believe most churches and synagogues and everything generally do have I don't think it's a greed motive, certainly not at the local level. If you are truly doing your job right, you won't pay taxes anyway, because any dollar that comes in is going to go right back out to the people in that community. If you bring in $1 million and you spend $1 million for the homeless and the poor and everything else,
won't have anything hoarded to tax.
Right. Nothing gets all the way up to the Vatican, because it never gets beyond the local level, and there's no need to tax it. And in fact, churches would have an incentive to make sure, like any nonprofit organization, churches would have the incentive to make sure that every dollar that comes in also goes out. And I'll add that one more thing onto that, as you guys both know. Religious organizations are shielded greatly when it comes to the books, and if you tax them, that would end quite promptly when you send your information to the IRS. So the old pocketing of money and graft and paying off people that are ill-gotten people, those things they wouldn't come to an end, but they would certainly have a light shed on them, and people would have an understanding of them. So churches can be could be tax exempt by default by simply using any proceeds they had and giving it right back to the community.
You know, it's a good conversation to have. You know, I don't even feel like if we disagree on something, I don't even think it's a sinister reason to disagree about it.
No,
because we just want a better country, right? Here's some things. In Islam, it's a tough deal with how a Muslim is supposed to live and interact in a non-Muslim society. So, the reason why I'm saying that is because a Muslim in America, we're going to pay taxes individually.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to pay taxes, but I'm also going to pay my zakat. I pay it to my local mosque or my local masjid. Now, here's the thing. There's Islamic ruling on what that mosque can do with the zakat. Mandatorily, it has to be used for people in need.
Okay.
You know, you can't use the taxes to get a Bentley for the imam.
I was about to say, yeah.
You know, I mean, not the taxes, but you can't use
need a new car.
You can't use the zakat for that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if a strict rules are set, we abide by them because it's our religion. But to control what a religious institution does, I mean, some things you wanna enforce by opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but in this country, the beautiful America that we love, the good side of, I mean, we don't want to cross the line too much because it's like this. There's an author, last name Hart, and Dustin can help me with that. I think his name. He wrote a book.
What am I helping you with?
The name of the book called The 100 Most Influential People.
Oh, yes.
In that book, it says if we don't like dictatorships, okay, but if the Prophet Muhammad was the dictator, it says in that book it would be better for society. It's not the government laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that enforce those laws properly. If a law is made with good intent, but you get the wrong person in there, they're going to figure out how to use the law wrongly, like what the government does with our taxes.
Mm-hmm. Now, with gun control and whatnot being a hot topic, I don't see as to where religion plays much of a role in there. Dustin, can you tell me, does religion play a role in any of the topics going on about gun control?
Well, I think that the challenge that we have in gun control is multi-layered and is unique to the United States because of the multicultural aspect of the United States. Even countries like Britain and Australia, they claim to be multicultural. They don't have the same challenges that we have.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same structure and historical basis that we have. So we have to come up with our own solution. Now, as far as religion is concerned, I can speak for Islam, and Islam commands us to be able to defend our families and protect ourselves. And, we have to be responsible with that. We have to train ourselves. We have to be conditioned, and that means responsible gun ownership. And I don't think that there's any Muslim who could legitimately say that it's un-Islamic to declare that there must be some sort of responsible gun control, like say classes for licensing or permits that go with some sort of a course. But I'm telling you that as a Muslim, if there was a law that I couldn't have the weapons to defend my family against the ridiculous amount of anti-Muslim hatred, then I'm breaking the law. That's all there is to it. Because God's law to defend my family is greater than man's law to feel safe.
All right. Casey, from the Christian standpoint, where does religion get into the gun debate?
I think popular opinion of right-wing conservative evangelical Christians is that they all own guns. So that would be where most people would sit if they were
Baptist.
pretty uninformed. I don't think that if Jesus came back and he had to vote on whether or not we can have guns, he'd ask the question, like, why do you need them in the first place? I'm like, oh, because we're all really fallen and, everything's broken. I personally own a gun, a shotgun, and for some of the same reasons that Dustin was putting out there. I've never had to use it. I don't know if I ever will. But if they came down and said, hey, you got to give this thing up, I, on the other hand, would probably submit to the government and go, well, you've been put in place to cover us, and we believe in the sovereignty of God. So I'd go, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. That'd be my own take on it. Yeah.
John?
I think there's a difference between gun control and putting some regulations on what should be permitted and basically taking away all weapons. And by the way, we already have a form of gun control. It's the utmost extreme, but you cannot go out and buy a tank and drive it down the road. You can't go buy a cannon. You can't go buy a nuclear weapon or any kind of a rocket or some kind of a military grade or a hand grenade. You can't walk around with a hand grenade. There's a lot of things you can't do. So we already have some gun control. The concern comes when what is considered self-defense, like a shotgun or a handgun to defend yourself, which seems perfectly appropriate, and a AR-57 assault rifle that can mow down and kill 50 people in a minute. And I just don't see any case for being able to successfully defend myself if there's an army of people coming because I have an AR-57 assault rifle. Those people are going to get my assault rifle. They're going to use it on my family and other people possibly, and they're going to get me. Now, having said that, what is the big problem in this country? What makes our culture so unique? Well, one of them is we have more guns than we have people. So, yeah, they can say everybody turn in your handgun, and by definition, every law-abiding citizen would do that. But there would still be so many handguns out there that for people who did not do them, that you would just put yourself in jeopardy. And I completely see your concern being Muslim and concern in this country, particularly with the rhetoric that goes on. So, what do you do about that? Well, one of the biggest places that criminals get guns is they're stolen. They don't go out and buy them generally. They steal them from somewhere. Or they get a plan of somebody who doesn't have a criminal record to go to a store and buy one on their behalf. Give them a premium, they buy it from them. One of the ways to prevent and reduce the amount of guns, and by definition the amount of fatalities and deaths and incidents related to it, is to, just like literally anything else, like a car or a home or this very business here, you require the person who gets them to have the appropriate and accurate amount of insurance to have that. If I want to buy a car, I have a car, and I have to have insurance on my car. Without insurance on my car, I can't drive on the road. Now, here's the interesting thing. If I happen to have a poor driving record, if I had traffic tickets or DUIs or some combination of those, I would have to pay a significantly higher premium, or I would actually not be able to get insurance at all, in which case I wouldn't be able to drive. I could break the law and drive anyway, but if I got pulled over, I would go to jail, and it would be an incredible risk. Mm-hmm. If we did something similar with guns, and just like when I was 16 and got my license, my insurance was high. It went down a little bit at 21, a little bit more at 25. If you said you want to get a gun at 21, that's your right to do that. But we're going to look at your background because these are private companies that are doing that. You'll like this, Dustin, as a libertarian. And these private companies are going to say, hey, you know what? We know you're kind of a hothead. You got in a bar fight at 18. You got a lot of speeding tickets. You dropped out of school. You know what? We think you're going to be a higher risk. And so you're going to be able to get a gun, but we're going to charge you $800 a year for insurance. And what that insurance covers is if that gun gets stolen from you because you're irresponsible or you didn't lock it properly or you forgot it somewhere or anything else, or you become a hothead again and decide to use it or threaten to use it and shoot somebody in the leg and they're permanently paralyzed, that person will get restitution from the insurance policy for you having that gun. And ultimately, if you're a total hothead and you got a couple of assault charges under your belt, no one's going to insure you, just like no one will give you a license, and you wouldn't be permitted to get that gun. And so here's the other part of that equation too. You have a need. Let's say I live in a very unsafe neighborhood, right? And we know Chicago and things like that too. And I know that I have a good chance of getting robbed or something, and I don't want that to happen to me. I may carry a gun, and I'll pay that premium to carry that gun. But if it's someone like me who generally lives in a pretty safe area, who doesn't carry a gun, not particularly for any ideology other than I just don't feel like I need one. I feel like I'd be the guy who would fall out of my pocket. I'd probably end up possibly shooting myself. Someone would steal it from me, and the statistics show. people who have a gun in the household, that gun is more likely to be used by a family member on a family member than any criminal ever. So knowing those stats and the fact that I would have to pay an insurance policy every year, even if it was just $100, I would say, not worth it for me to spend that money on the gun and the insurance. That'll be one less gun that would ultimately be out there. And the argument's going to be made on the other side that, well, then criminals are just having without insurance. That's true. People drive without insurance too, but that gives us recourse as law enforcement when we stop those people to have an additional charge on them, and that additional charge is carrying a weapon that's improperly insured. And it lets us know who has the weapons and where they are, which I know a lot of people don't like, but it's certainly going to make you think twice and be a little bit less curious when it comes to actually where you're going to put it and use it and so forth.
Now, Dustin, I got a silly question for you.
Okay.
As a Muslim, why is your name still Dustin and not Al-Shali or something like that?
You know, even Muslims ask me that, and the answer is very simple, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, only changed the names of a few of the companions, the first people to embrace Islam. And the reason he changed the names is because those people had names that meant something ugly. So the actual practice of the Prophet Muhammad was not to change the name, but to honor the family that that the person came from by keeping their original name.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, that's good that Dustin said that, because as an African American and a Muslim, a lot of African Americans that become Muslims and they learn about their own history, that name that we would have to us would be ugly, because it represents a history of being enslaved.
Here it is. Quick questions with Siddhartha Khosla. Quick question. You know, you have such a unique way of touching people with music without words. What's the next passion for you?
No, you know, I think for me, I'm grateful that I get to make music for a living. If you told my 20-year-old self that I would be doing this for a living and I'd be working on, like, you know, one of the biggest shows in the world right now and making stuff that I believed in artistically, I would be, you know, pinching myself. I'm just grateful to be doing this, and I'm going to keep on composing for film and television. That's all I want to do. I want to keep on putting out good music that I believe in.
Quick question.
Everyone says there's a secret to great seafood. Well, they're right. Here at the Sunset Grill, we've been the secret keepers for over 27 years, serving St. Augustine the freshest seafood and chowders you can find. From our dry-rubbed and slow-roasted ribs to our handcrafted sandwiches, it's no wonder the Sunset Grill is St. Augustine Beach's most award-winning restaurant. The great chowder debate? There's no question. The taste of St. Augustine? Check. The Daddle Pepper Festival? We burn the competition. And many more. You want to know the secret? You'd never believe us. You'll have to come taste it for yourself. Find us on Facebook or give us a call. 1-904-471-5555. The Sunset Grill. Somewhere on A1A.
I'm going to throw something at you, Casey, and it was a question posted on a Facebook group where I told them that I was sitting down and I asked them to post their questions, and this is one of them. Exodus 22:20. You must kill and destroy those who worship another god. I want to talk to you about that, okay? Because a lot of people are talking about how Islam is a violent religion, and they call for what everyone says jihad against non-believers and atheists and things like that. When somebody sees something like this, where, you know, it's in the Holy Bible, you must kill and destroy those who worship another god. What is the context? Is there a context? Come on, break it down, Casey.
Yeah, man, there's a ton of context, and I'd start by saying that's Old Covenant. So Jesus came and he said, I have a new covenant, and I have new commands of you. So I temper all of that by saying, yeah, it's in the Bible and it's real. But if you only read to Exodus 22, what verse was it?
22:20.
22:20, then you like close the Bible and you go out and grab a gun and start mowing people down. You haven't read the contextual story and the meta narrative, as well as you haven't seen the fact that Jesus came and said, "Hey, man, I'm not going to discredit the Old Testament, but that plane has landed, and this plane, the New Covenant one, is ascending. Which when he is leaving, he says." Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them and then teaching them to obey what I have commanded you. And when Jesus is asked what is the greatest commandment, he says, okay, there's two things but one commandment. Love God and love your neighbor. It doesn't say love God and then mow down the guy that doesn't practice whatever this is going to look like. So the context of Exodus 20:22 is they've come out of Egypt and they don't know who they are. They know the stories of Abraham and Isaac, and then Jacob, who then becomes Israel, and Israel is the Israelites, and they kind of populate the Egyptian territory. And then on their exodus, and as they're going to the new land, God's saying there are people there that if they get infused, if you infuse their religions into the one that I'm giving you as Yahweh, it's going to pollute the water. So I'm telling you at this juncture, you cannot have people practicing other things because the purity of what I'm trying to do, it's a brand new thing. The purity of that has to remain intact. So therefore, this is what I'm calling you to do. Thankfully, that was Old Testament, but that was the context with which that was spoken into.
Is there an Old Testament of the Quran, or is it just one complete works?
It's just one complete book. There's no
there's no
remake.
Yeah.
Or where the rules changed.
There's no remix.
No.
Okay.
But the Islamic concept is that, as I mentioned earlier, about the names of religions. Jesus, alayhi salam, is in the Quran. Moses, alayhi salam, Ibrahim, Ishaq, Ismail. These are prophets that are in the Quran. The Quran speaks sort of in narrative, as if God is speaking, as if Allah is speaking. So it's not like it's one complete book, 114 chapters. It's not. Okay. There's not different books in it.
Hey, for context, can you tell folks what year that was written?
What year?
Mm-hmm. Or yeah,
the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
The Quran was written over a 23-year period of time.
Over 23 years?
Yes, over a 23-year period of time.
In what years were those approximately?
Well, we got different calendars. We're talking.
Okay.
So
you studied the Gregorian, right?
Huh?
Is it the Gregorian calendar?
Well, you have the Islamic calendar, or the Hijri calendar, and you have the Gregorian calendar. So if we go by the Gregorian calendar, you would say that the first revelation was received. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam received that first revelation. If you're going on the Gregorian calendar, that is the year 610.
610?
Yes.
Like 610?
610. What do you say, AD? Mm-hmm. Muslims like to say common era.
Right. Yeah. but 1,400 years ago, I think.
Yeah, 1,439 years ago. Mm-hmm. If you're going by the Islamic calendar, 1,439 years on the Islamic calendar ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Islamic calendar starts year one. Year one is when the first society, the first free Islamic society established with called the Hijra, of when the Muslims left Mecca and established their society in Medina. That's year one.
Okay.
Or year zero. You know how.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Here's what I have trouble getting my head around.
Okay.
I would like to point out one thing about the Quran, though, just to kind of flesh out what Brother Ibn said.
Sure.
We still have the original Quran as it was compiled by the companions of the Prophet. And
Yes.
Prophet Muhammad verified the Quran before he died.
Yes.
So it is unique among the holy texts in that regard, because it was verified and instructions were given regarding the compilation before Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, died.
Do we still have the original manuscripts for the Bible?
Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls helped us a ton with that. We don't have the first letter that Paul wrote.
Score one for the Muslims. No.
Oh, we're not doing that.
Well, if you think they're just, and John wanted to say something, so I want to give it back to him. If you think through a lot of the contextual things about even the characters and the historical figures that he was just talking about, those came from the Bible, which was written thousands of years before. The scrolls were written thousands before. I mean, the Bible's not 2,000 years old. The Bible's like 3,000 years old. I mean, these are things and things passed on. So what was taken up by the Prophet Muhammad in those stories of Abraham, and those were based off of things coming from those stories in those people. So some of that is tie-in and some of that is not. So grabbing something from 1,300 years ago versus some of the Dead Sea Scrolls are 1,800 years ago.
Okay.
And preserved. But John, go for it.
No, I was just going to say it's difficult for me with my limited brain power that God gave me to wrap my head around any of this any more than trying to interpret Harry Potter or something. And I don't mean to belittle religion. It's just very difficult for me to see something that happened thousands of years ago. The New Testament of the Bible wasn't written until 71 years after Christ passed away. 71 years. If you said come talk to me in 71 years and tell me something that you remember or your father or grandfather remembered that you can share. I just can't imagine the accuracy being even close, other than how it would satisfy what they may or may not truly believe, but certainly what they have an agenda to believe. When you go back thousands of years, the First Testament, where it says plainly, I believe, that God was an angry God, it's very difficult for me to believe how a all-knowing, all-loving, all-in-control God. We get angry when we're not in control. We get angry when something is not done and there's not much we can do about it. I can't imagine an angry God damning his people and having floods and killing all these people and saying all these horrible things and doing these things because he's just so angry at his people. You're God. You can do anything. Why aren't you doing something? And the New Testament, of course, is very different, but it's somewhat different. But there's still a lot of parables and whether you do a literal interpretation or a non-contextual interpretation, which makes it sound sometimes even more loony. To me, it's like trying to interpret Star Wars or Harry Potter or something. It's ludicrous in my mind, with my limited brain power, to try to even remotely make heads or tails of that, other than to use it, which has some good, as part of a broader discussion on norms and civility that we should behave and exhibit and do unto others today.
Now, Casey, I know you got to go,
Yeah.
but I've got one final question for you, and
Okay.
it's something that, again, was brought up in one of the forums that was on Facebook, and it's Job, your man, Job.
My man, Job.
38:7.
Okay.
All the sons of God. That's plural. Is there more than one son of God?
What's the full verse?
Oh, now I got to look up Job 38.
Yeah, come on, come prepared, bro.
That's why I don't do this live. Let me see. All the sons of God.
Yeah.
Job 38:7.
Because we'd be looking at...
Do we got the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
You got the Wi-Fi code. I probably should. I mean Wi-Fi. You shouldn't.
All right. Job 38:7. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
That just sounds good. Like,
It sounds great.
Do we not like that?
But adding the S on son
Yeah.
pluralizes it.
So sons of God. So oh gosh, man, all these questions are like 20-minute answers, but I'm gonna try to do it in like 2.
Now! Do
Yeah,
it
right.
now!
So the story of Job, and it's even like I'd want to see that full chapter and go, is this a song that they're singing? Is this a poem that's inserted into this, or is this historical documentation? Remember, I talked to you, if anyone listened out, about like there's a library within the Bible versus just this is one thing.
Well, for me, it's the way it was written.
Yeah.
Again, sons, pluralizing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I would claim that I'm a son of God because I've been born into his family. Jesus was the son of God in that he was born of a virgin and all that other like crazy supernatural stuff. But in the New Testament, it talks a ton about our heir to and our adoption into the family of God, that we are sons of God and daughters of God. And if this context in here is looking forward, then that makes a ton of sense. If it's looking backwards, why there's a plural? I mean, I'd want to see the original Hebrew and go, okay, did it mean to be plural? Probably.
Okay.
Versus the people of God, the sons of God. Versus, is it a capital S?
No.
Okay, well, that would be a big indicator as well. They're not talking about what you're talking about. They're talking about the lowercase s sons.
Okay.
Well, in Semitic languages, there's no capital lowercase. letters.
But they translate it based on, like, if you look at the Son of Man in New Testament stuff, a lot of times there will be a capitalization to say what they're talking about is something very different. Old Testament, I don't know that you'd see that.
Well, at this point, Casey's going to have to break. He's got to bail out of here. John's going to have to break. Dustin and Ibn, do you mind staying with me? I got some questions for you guys.
All right.
Now,
I can hang on.
All right. Now, before John and Casey leave, if someone's got questions the same way I did, is there an email?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. Usually I get it attached to these things and happy to insert or internal messaging, LinkedIn, Casey Crimmins with an I, and then casey.crimmins@gmail.com. Man, just hit me up. Because usually whatever answer I give here is like the 26,000 foot view. And I'm like, if you really want to talk this thing through, like, we're going to need some time. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay. John, how can someone get a hold of you?
I don't know how they can get a hold of me, but I can tell you this. I encourage everyone before committing to being an atheist or agnostic or any religion, check them all out. And check them all thoroughly, and check them all out as adults, and really listen to the message. Not necessarily the people portraying the message, because sometimes they're not the best people, and sometimes they are. But that's a person. But really read, listen, learn, and lead yourself to a conclusion. And then when you've finally done that, and you've checked out all the religions that you think you can check out, lie in bed. And if you believe in God, ask Him, what do I believe? What just makes sense? What does common sense tell me as an adult now? What does common sense tell me is reality? And I think if you did that, I think the decision, and I don't know what your decision is, but I think when you do make that decision, you will feel a lot more committed to your faith or lack thereof than any kind of a persuasion any of us can do for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. John? If a Muslim wants to denounce Islam, how is he looked at by other Muslims at that point? There's this urban legend that Muslims want to kill atheists, or if you denounce Islam, they want to kill you. Can you clarify? Help me figure that one out, both of you.
That's actually a good question. I'm glad you asked it. You want to take it, Ibn?
We could tag team. So you asked a question. You asked a question like that to Casey, right? Mm-hmm. It's like this. People nitpick verses, sayings, and actions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Does that mean blessings be upon him?
Peace and blessings be upon him. Yes.
I'm getting better.
Alayhi salam. We say that for the other prophets. Now, what I was saying is that saying that someone who leaves Islam, I know what you're insinuating, that what the urban legend is that Muslims are out to kill you.
Kill atheists. If you don't have faith, then they want to kill you.
We have to look at the authentic Islamic sources, one, and then look at what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, because for Muslims, that's our example. With that said, given the context of anybody leaving Islam should be killed, there are hadith, sayings and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, that say to kill those apostates. That's translation, right? But what people fail to do is give a context.
The same way with the Christian Bible.
Yes.
Like I just asked him, what this says. Okay.
So, if you don't mind, can I answer your question with a question?
Sure.
Let's say you are at war. You're in warfare. You don't know when the enemy's coming. You don't know who's who.
Yeah.
As part of that enemy. Okay? And you have someone who comes and joins your nation, joins your state, and joins your religion. And then before long, they outwardly go and denounce your religion. Not just that, but go back to the enemy and join what they're doing. What do you call that in today's terms?
Traitor.
Yeah, traitor.
You call it a traitor, right?
Yeah.
There's a term for it now. A person that committed treason. Right? So what's the penalty for treason?
Death.
Exactly. So given the context, like I said earlier, the Prophet Muhammad was not just a prophet, religious leader of the faith.
Mm-hmm.
He was a statesman, equivalent to a governor, of a nation. So some of these laws are not individual laws like, hey, you my friend, you became a Muslim, and then next week you say, oh, even I think I'm changed my mind, I'm gonna go murder you. No, these are like state laws. If I'm an American citizen and I decide I want to go and become a Russian citizen, I can't come back.
Yeah.
I can't.
So contextually, it's talking about traitors.
Yes.
Okay. Now, shifting gears just a little bit, again, this is one of those urban legends or things that people talk about, women's rights. Do women have rights in the Muslim faith? If they do, are they like the rights that you have here in the Western civilization?
Okay.
Let me tell you something.
Go ahead.
Something that people don't know about Islam that should is that Islam is the first major religion to grant a woman not only the right of divorce, but the right to divorce and maintain her property and maintain her inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And a woman, in Islam, a woman can even divorce her husband for a reason like if she is dissatisfied with him sexually. That is a legitimate reason for a woman to divorce her husband in Islam.
Really? I am so glad my wife isn't Muslim.
Oh, no. Man.
Thank God thank God she's a Christian.
Oh, man. So look, it's interesting. An agnostic guy comes here and gives that great advice about what a person should do, picking a religion or picking something that they want to hold on to, because
I wanted to shout hallelujah.
Yeah, because that's what more people should do. When you look at Islamic scripture about women, the women's rights are there. What Dustin was talking about of being able to divorce, being able to inherit and own their own property. Another thing in Islam is it's a Western idea for when you marry for the woman to change her last name to the man's last name. In Islam, that woman does not have to change her last name and give up her identity and her family name.
Really?
Really. But what I'm talking about is the concept, because a lot of people, they want to get down to the concept of why we do the things we do.
Mm-hmm.
Is a woman our property where you would give her your name like I just was talking about a slave?
Mm-hmm.
Or does she have her own identity where she can keep her name and doesn't have to, change her name?
Now, when I say over there, would I be talking about Saudi Arabia? Where would I be talking about? Where's the mainland, I guess you could say?
It's almost 2 billion Muslims in the world.
That's hard to say. That's really hard to say because all the countries that are Muslim majority countries today, all of them are less than 150 years old. They were born out of chaos and war, and they were born out of the chaos and war and occupation of the British government. The British came in, they looked over at the Ottoman Empire and said, they got a lot of resources. And by the way, the British were the only ones that called it the Ottoman Empire. For Muslims, it was the Caliphate. It was the unified nations of Muslims. But each group of people had a sovereign state. So what happened is, after the British came in and found groups of people like the House of Saud, who were extremists like ISIS is today, and funded them to help overthrow the caliphate so that they could carve up the lands and take the resources for themselves, after all that happened, they drew lines on the maps and grouped people together that had a long history of not really getting along together very well.
Okay.
So when you would say over there, it doesn't mean anything from an Islamic standpoint.
Okay.
From an Islamic standpoint, what would be over there would be ancient Arabia, would be from the time of the Prophet for maybe the first 1,000 years of Islam, where we have this rich history of scholarship, where we have advances in science and advances in intellectual thought, and prior to the colonialism and the wars that tore our people apart.
Okay. Dustin, what's the biggest misconception that people have about Muslims? The one that you're constantly dispelling.
The ones that you've addressed today, I've had to deal with, and I'll tell you, I have to deal with it on a daily basis. Being active politically and socially in social consciousness issues, I have to deal with it all the time. Because as soon as I comment on a news article, for instance, I commented on a news article about the 3 kids that burned their own flag in Charlotte, and then they were arrested for burning their own flag.
Yeah.
And I made a comment about that, and then the people that didn't like my comment went and mined my own page, found out I was Muslim, and then I get hit with, rapid fire barrage of questions and accusations. So we get accusations like Muslims are required to kill non-Muslims. We get accusations like we marry children, that, just ridiculous stuff. Well, they get me. The thing that gets me is there are concepts and terms that we don't use as Muslims, especially from the community established by Imam and Atheist Muhammad, but also as Sunni Muslims, a supermajority of Muslims, we don't use certain concepts. Like you ask a concept that's predominantly used by Shia. And then there's terms like taqiyya, which is usually only used by Shia. I never even heard of the term. And I'm talking about, I had studied from scholars and I had gotten deep into the meat of the hadith and the science of hadith. And I had never heard this term because it's a Shia concept. But, you got these people that make millions of dollars every year doing these tours and circuits, teaching people how to hate Muslims.
It's a big money
and they make millions of dollars doing it.
Oh, I bet.
People like Daniel Pipes and, what's her name, Ann Coulter, and then just all these people that sow hate and discord, they're making all this money, and they invent ways for people to hate other people. The concept of taqiyya means that I can lie about Islam to spread Islam. Now, logically, that makes no sense, right? How can you spread something with a lie? But what the concept of taqiyya is that if you are under the threat of death or assault, like if you hold a gun to my head and you say, convert to Buddhism, then I'll convert to Buddhism to save my life, but it doesn't affect my Islam. And that's a Quranic concept where Allah revealed the son of the first martyrs. He watched his mom tortured to death, watched his dad get tortured to death, and he said, you know what, I'm not Muslim anymore. And he kissed the statue of the pagan god just to get away. And so he got away and he ran to get back to Muhammad. And when he got back to Muhammad, he was begging for his forgiveness. But before he even arrived, there had been a verse revealed where Allah had said that if you are forced to say a lie against Allah, meaning that if you're forced to renounce your religion, then Allah doesn't hold it against you because He knows it doesn't enter your heart.
Okay, not even we touched on that on our podcast about Muslims last time when I asked about bacon.
Yeah,
and I was like, whether it's either eat bacon or starve, and I learned that you eat it and live.
Eat bacon.
But what's the best way for someone to reach out to you, my man?
The best way for people I don't know to get in touch with me is going to be at Foothills Interfaith Assembly on Facebook. If you just go to the page for Foothills Interfaith Assembly, you can message there. I and my co-director, Tony, get the messages. And Tony is a Wiccan priest.
Oh, wow.
And, so a Muslim and a Wiccan got together and made an interfaith assembly to combat religious prejudice in our communities.
Ibn, is there a way if somebody wants to reach out and
Well,
ask you questions?
My mosque, my masjid, it's right on 400 West Sugar Creek Road. It's called Masjid Al-Shaheed. That's where I attend. And we have our services, our Juma, on Fridays at 1:30, and other services, on Sunday for people more so that can come and ask questions about Islam and things like that. You might even see me there.
All right. Excellent.
So there it is. It's all out on the table. What do you guys think? Did I ask the questions you wanted to know? Did anything leave you wondering? Email me. Shoot me a message. Reach out to me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram as Yamman. That's YAMNMAN. That's right, kind of like damn, man, but with a Y. And it's just one word. A true thanks to everybody that's listening and to my guests and participants that took time out of their schedule to talk about them and their beliefs. Thank you so much. This is exactly how we get better. Do you have an interesting story? Call Jerry. No, I'm kidding. Email me. I'll get you on the phone. So get ready, because I really don't know where we're going, but it's going to be a hell of a ride. Let's go! Yeah, I found the button this time, y'all.